All right, so we got a couple dumpsters we got to get dropped off real quick. After that, though, we are going to turn around. We're going to get this bad boy picked up and dropped off to a customer. Long overdue. I had quite a few tire kickers on this one. People who are kind of indecisive about what they wanted for their storage needs. But I've got a guy, he wants it as soon as I can get it dropped off. So we're going to get some dumpsters taken care of and then go help that guy out. In the meantime, you guys know Keegan, if you follow the channel, he is running around. He's doing quite a few dumpsters today. So he's all in on dumpsters for the rest of the day. And I'm gonna kind of just fill in, do some drop offs so we can keep up. And then again, like I said, take care of that special container. We don't do them all the time, but we do them enough where it does take time to, you know, get them done. Give the devil as I go do this drop off. There's Keegan right there. All right, easy enough. Love an easy drop. Let's bug out back to the shop. So before we pick that up, we need to swap trailers. There she is. I haven't used her in a while either, but she should be ready to go. I think it would be way cooler though if we turned this into our shipping container rig. Rip that bed off, put some rails on it like a roll-off truck, put rails on the shipping containers and pick those up. But somebody in the comments tell me, I believe you can only have like 2 foot of overhang from what would be considered, I guess, your rear end or your bumper. So unless that's the case, this is an 18-foot bed. I would need to add about another 2 feet on there. And right now, I believe we're 2 feet from there. So I'm not sure about that overhang, but if I could get like a 20-foot stinger back here, and by stinger, I mean like the end of the roll-off rails, I think that'd be pretty sweet. Get another one out. All right, let's take a look at the inside, making sure nothing crazy's come up. You can see some old oil stains. My best guess is before we got this, or one of the customers that's had it in the past, probably stored a lawnmower side by side because that oil stain's always kind of been there. But we just double checked, there's nothing leaking, nothing new. You always check the bottoms of these containers. That's where rust likes to start. So it'll start to eat up right here, and you'll even sometimes just basically see the wall start to float. This container is still in pretty good shape, and then you always hope for pinholes to never be around. So nothing in here because I've actually already locked myself in here once. And what you do is you basically pull the door closed, and you actually have somebody basically lock you in. And it's complete darkness, and if you see little pinholes anywhere, you know you have a problem. But this one's good. So I've already brushed it out. I'm gonna get it loaded, and then when I get it back home, I'll probably take a leaf blower through it. I'm gonna stop by my house for lunch, so I'm gonna grab my big backpack leaf blower and a mask, blow out all the dust. That way it just looks really good for the customer, and then we'll get it dropped off. Woo, it's a breezy day. Some of you guys that follow me are also in the dumpster business, and I'll tell you what, if you think it's hard to line up a dumpster with a trailer setup, I know hook lifts are usually pretty easy to swoop in, but wait until you try to line up one of these shipping containers on a flatbed, because if you really want to get it on easy, you want this thing to be straight along with the truck. But kind of like we do dumpsters, put it in reverse or neutral, and we'll either reverse under it without the winch, or we'll get the winch out and we'll neutral the truck under it. So either way, that's how I've always done it. But I will tell you what, if we do continue to do this, which I actually want to step this up next year, you can actually get wheels that attach to these little feet down here, which make it really easy to either go up or actually maneuver the container on the ground later. So I will probably be getting myself a set of those just to make my life a little easier. Let's get this thing on. So we are using my backup truck, which isn't quite as good as pushing itself under here and torquing its way to load this up. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna nurse it the rest of the way on. That way we keep it straight, and to make sure I don't slam that accelerator straight into my own building. I wanna keep this as damage-free as possible. So you've probably seen me do this on the channel before if you follow, but we're gonna run this chain through here and then use the winch. All right, so that's what that looks like. Kind of make sure the hook is well placed in there so it doesn't come flying off. Then we'll put that hook to the winch right in the center. Our trusty Harbor Freight winch is hooked up. Get that nice and tight and we'll start getting it loaded. Luckily, I'm not in a huge rush today, so let me show you what you can do if it starts to kind of go sideways on you. I drug it away from the building a little bit, and I purposely drug it a little sideways so I could show you what happens. See how we've got a lot of room on this side, but we've crossed over the actual trailer on this side. So this can kind of get into a hairy situation. You really don't want to try to load something like this sideways, because yeah, tip over is a big possibility, or you know, just a lot of frustration and obviously wear and tear on your equipment. If you follow the channel, you've heard me use the word leverage all the time. So I always keep some blocks of wood and a jack, and I use leverage to change the tires by, you know, using the actual bed to pick up the trailer itself without using any kind of jack. And I use these stands sometimes to basically, as I lower the trailer back down, what's gonna happen is it's gonna put all that weight on this jack, and then since I've got it at an angle, it should kind of slide itself straight. I said should. Doesn't always work the first try, but by the end it always does. So it works all the time, 50% of the time. So we go ahead and start to lower it down. So now we're riding on my rail. See how it's not quite sitting on the trailer? Super close. We will put it under there again, and then we'll actually lower the trailer. So as in to lower the trailer, or raise the trailer in this case, raise it back up as if we were trying to pick it up again. So of course I didn't get it on film, but as you can see, we are now in the rails. Once I'm confident it's actually straight as well, I'll put the actual container down a little bit. That foot basically acts like a brake, especially in gravel. I'll toss the truck in reverse, and then I'll winch it in just to make it all easier. So obviously there's a lot of ways you can do this, especially with a Jimmy rig setup. Keep in mind, this trailer was never meant for this. And there's also obviously hook lift trucks, rollbacks. If I had a front loader, I would just go into the pockets and I would drop it on any type of flatbed, right? But this was actually just an equipment tilt deck trailer. It was never originally engineered for this. Companies like Max D actually make a trailer or a container package for their trailer, where it has like an integrated winch that has a path through that it can sit in. It also has fabricated rails that can be like added on. These, they're just welded on. It's just a piece of angle iron basically, and then a metal plate for it to slide on, which we usually would lubricate too. So it's not originally intended for that. The one thing that annoys me the most too is even though this bumper right here does collapse up in here, it doesn't really sit up in here. He actually drilled a hole so that you could run a pin through it to hold it while it's actually so it doesn't drag across concrete. Gravel I'm not as worried about, but as you can see, it's not ideal. I wish that thing would kind of lift up and tuck itself all the way up in there. So not the most ideal setup, but we make it work with this trailer. There are definitely better trailers for this job. And obviously there's trucks that are manufactured for this specific thing. We've made it work, but I predict in the future, if we're gonna continue to do this, we'll make a slight change. Let's go ahead and throw those straps over the top. And for safety, of course, you go ahead and flip the straps, clip them and say, that ain't going nowhere. You don't say that, there's a huge possibility that 50% of the time it is actually gonna fly off. So make sure to always flip the straps and say it ain't going nowhere. One thing I forgot to mention was this customer is actually getting a stack of pallets. Very seldom, but sometimes we'll pick up an enormous amount of pallets, and what we'll do is we'll just sell them, you know, outright, or we'll take them to the recycling center to just basically earn a few extra bucks. But this customer in particular asked for a shipping container, said, do you know anybody who sells pallets? And I'm like, well, somehow I feel like you already know we do, but maybe you don't. But we do sell them occasionally. We have them laying around. In this case, this customer is storing salt in here, which tends to kind of go against one of my big rules for these containers. let's get on the road and I'll tell you why. So if you know anything about salt, you probably know that salt is insanely corrosive, especially to metal. If you're in the Rust Belt state or you're ever trying to buy a vehicle in the Rust Belt state, you know that salting roads can lead to the deterioration of your cars, in my case, my dumpsters and trailers as well. So I tend to wash them quite often in the winter time. Some guys might wash their vehicles once a month. I typically do mine at least once a week in the winter time, just because that salt will just eat away at metal, and it'll just kind of happen really fast. Like, you think it's okay, and then all of a sudden you're looking at the bottom of your truck, or maintenance wise you're trying to take, you know, and change brakes or do a simple oil change, and you just notice all of your bolts and stuff are rusted, and it just eats into the time of your maintenance job as well, and obviously the life of your vehicle is cut. These shipping containers are pretty good to store stuff in as is. I mean, they come across the waters, you know, from other countries, but there are certain things that fare in them better than others. For example, if you put furniture with a nice lacquer on it, and these things bake, it's metal, they bake in the sun, so it could actually start to peel or remove that lacquer. Obviously too, humidity is a problem. They come with ventilation, but there's ways to actually improve the ventilation as well. If you ever actually want to store something very important in one of these, I would highly suggest insulating them, spraying insulation. They'd probably last you 100 years in that case, because they no longer sweat. Well, because humidity can be an issue, the actual inside of the container can start to sweat. So anything inside of the container might seem to be wet, but there's no leaks. So a lot of people get confused by this, and that's actually because the container itself is sweating and it possibly would drip on stuff. And the last thing you want is for sweat to drip onto salt and then run off inside of their container. This guy was pretty cool. He was really upfront with me right away. He's like, hey man, I just want to let you know what I'm trying to do here. Let me know if it's even possible, because I have a feeling it might not be. So he was well aware of the possibility of me not renting this to him because of it. He's a landscaper and a snow guy, so you know, in this winter time, you would typically be using quite a bit of salt. Well, as you can see, there ain't a whole lot of snow, and there hasn't been. I don't actually predict that there will be much, you know, knock on wood. But in that case, he has a lot of salt he wants to store for a short amount of time. I told him we could probably work it out. You know, I for a long-term solution, I told him exactly what I just said to you. But in the short term, we could still make it work by, you know, putting some tarps on the bottom and on the top in case the container was to ever sweat. But he also mentioned to me that, hey, this might be something that I'd like to keep, so would you do more of like a rent-to-own thing? And I said, well, I don't normally, but this container I have rented out several times. I've gotten my value out of it, and at this point, I would actually like to replace it with a cleaner, nicer looking container that kind of matches some of my others. This was always kind of one of the uglier ones I had, so I'd like to get a newer one and brand it. So this might actually work out in the long run for both of us. So we stopped by the house, we got her blown out, everything's good to go. I'm gonna go ahead and get her dropped off now. Of course now though, it is raining, so it's always something. Might make the drop a little bit more interesting depending on the terrain, but we'll see. I'm so embarrassed. This was the most understanding guy I've ever rented to in my life. We get it dropped, it's pouring down rain, I'm ready to go. I've got people calling me for dumpsters, so I'm like, all right man, let's go through the container, I'll show it to you. You know, just had it open, I've got your pallets in here. I kid you not, you guys, I've had this thing open several times. It sat for 2 years. I've only had it for a couple weeks since it came back. Never had a complaint from the previous customer. I popped that door open, you can see it's raining. Huge puddle right in the middle of the floor. I was so mad and embarrassed, but he was so understanding. I was like, man, I've had this open and in the rain, I've picked it up, I've moved it, I don't really understand. I had to trust him a lot. I had him lock me in it so I could see if I could find a hole, and I just could not find one. And then finally, I just am running my hand all over the top, and I find one tiny little drop. I found out that basically there's a dent in the roof that has just kind of puddled with water. It's only about this big. It's puddled with water and it's finally started to rust through. This can't happen when you move the container around. You know, it could have been totally fine before, and then we moved it a couple more times, had it at just the right angle. Water just kind of started slipping through. You know, we agitated it and it finally rusted all the way. So yeah, super, super frustrating. But the guy was so cool about it. And we went through the options of how we can repair it or how I can, you know, bring him another one. But he was like, man, this is here. I've got stuff coming here soon. I've still got a few days. And then as we're standing there, the guy calls him to drop off the salt. So we're going through a game plan. The game plan is I plan to come back. We are going to repair it with both welding and Gacko. If you know what Gacko is, it's something you put on like a metal roof, so it'll hold up. So what we'll do is we'll kind of grind down all that rust. We'll look for any other damage on the roof too, because I inspected this unit on the top, on the bottom, but until it's actually pouring down rain and you actually see water coming in, it's hard to really be sure, especially since I locked myself in and didn't see light. So it's kind of, like I said, frustrating, but you know, this kind of stuff does happen. But the guy does want to buy it, so I want to have it repaired and in good shape. I don't want to sell him just a piece of crap that's already got an issue, especially if he's going to already have his salt in there. So I'm breaking all kinds of rules. I don't typically sell these. I don't typically do a rent-to-own situation, and it's kind of like a hybrid of that. He's going to rent it a few months, then buy it in bulk. And I definitely don't normally let somebody put salt in it. So I've opened up a huge can of worms here, and I hope I don't regret it. But man, it's always something with me. So, yep, that's the ordeal. But at the end of the day, this does kind of affirm what I've been thinking, which is I'm probably going to just start buying new containers, or one-trip containers as they're called, because I don't want to ever mess with this. And that's why I also don't mind selling in this one in particular. But that's kind of where my mind's at. So we had to jump back into the dumpster rig because we're on this commercial job again, and they're hustling, and they want us to hustle too. So as you can see, good timing, Keegan just rolled up as well as I get this one dropped. One thing I want to tell you guys, if you are in the dumpster space, you really need to look into Docket. If you didn't like the system you're with now, or you're just using your own system kind of like I've been, jump in and take a look at Docket. Right now I'm working with them to onboard my system, and we've been automating the process of dumpsters being ordered by customers. They also integrated in my shipping containers for storage and my equipment rentals all in one system. So to say that it's been very easy to use is incredible. I will drop a link. If you are in the dumpster business, schedule yourself a free demo and just take a look at what they have to offer. I promise you, you will be impressed, and you will realize how important process improvement is on your bottom line. Take a look at them. I'm currently onboarding everything from my fleet so that I can have an all-in-one solution rather than what I've done in the past, which is have about 4 or 5 different systems to run my business. It is going to be a game changer. The more and more I experiment with it, and now that we're using it, it's a no-brainer. Should have done it years ago. How's your day flowing? Oh yeah, that's good. What is this, number 2 or 3? 2, by the end of the day, 3? Yeah. 3 for them, plus the one I brought. Come on. Yeah, buddy. Yeah. But we're gonna fly out of here because we have more dumpsters to grab. And I can't make this up. Midwest weather, it's starting to snow now. So I'm gonna call it, guys. I had some more things planned for this, but I'll show you that in a future episode. Go ahead and like, subscribe, and follow for future stuff. And it's just another day in the life. If you're in this business or a business similar, it's all about problem solving. That is literally your entire job. And today, we had some problems to solve, but we got to figure it out, and we're gonna keep rolling. Catch you next time. Keep grinding.